Your mic.
So I just want to welcome everybody to both sides of the conversation. We have an amazing guest host. I know Kosh, she don't like me to say amazing, but to me, everybody's amazing. We have some amazing Black folks. So I'm just going to turn it over right now to our special guest host, Danielle Tompkins.
Thank you, everyone. And everybody, welcome to both sides of the conversation to our Sunday chat. Thank you for joining us on the Zoom and through Facebook Live. Happy New Year, everybody. So thank you for joining us today. We gather in this virtual space every Sunday at 2 p.m. And for those of you that are joining us on Facebook, please make sure to share this video, even start a watch party so that we can have as many folks included in this conversation as possible. But before we get into our time today, let's go over some interactive guidelines. So for our panelists, please be sure to have your mics muted when you are not speaking. And for our audience, if you are Zoom, you can utilize the raise hand feature or chat to let us know that you'd like to come up to the panel and ask your questions. And if you're on Facebook Live, we will be watching the comments. So ask your questions for our panelists if you have any. Okay, so I am Danielle Tompkins. I am your co-host for today, the co-founders of both sides of the conversation. And my co-hosts for today are...
I'm Rico Hamilton, co-founder of both sides of the conversation. And we also have...
John Henry, co-founder of both sides of the conversation.
Welcome. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Danielle. We're going to let you go ahead and do our community standards for the day before we start this conversation.
Okay, so both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation. So please be respectful of that. Be respectful of the panelists, hosts, and participants on our live webinar, as well as in the group. Healthy debates and conversation are encouraged, so please don't personalize anything with anyone. Name calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming anyone will not be allowed here. Your perspective is yours, and it's not a prescription. So you don't have to agree, but show respect. So creating open forum dialogue for healing and education is encouraged here. So for today, we are joined by Rico. I'm gonna hand it to you.
Yeah, so I'm Rico again. So today we're going to have an amazing conversation like we always have. Only amazing things. We're not doing good. We're not doing great. We're doing only amazing things. Our conversation today is around families healing after loss to violence. We had a great conversation last week. The previous weeks, I think it was 3 weeks in a row, we've been talking about family. We've been talking about parenting. We've been talking about some good stuff. So now we want to kind of bring it all together and talk about how do families heal during violence. I do a lot of violence prevention work, and in doing that violence prevention work, I see a lot of stuff that's going on. And me and John and our team, we wanted to say, look, let's bring it to the forefront because healing is important. But for some reason, and I always got to give both sides of the conversation. I'm not seeing too much healing. I see it sometimes, but not all the time. So I just want to start having that dialogue and start having that conversation. We have our sister on. She was an amazing hidden gem, right? Amazing hidden gem. She works in the county jails. She also do other things, and I'll let her, introduce herself once. Ayoola Mitchell, can you just introduce yourself and just tell folks a lot of the stuff that you got going on?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you, John and Rico, for inviting me, for having me. John and I go back 20 plus years, so it's always exciting for me to be able to share space. I met Rico probably about 5 years ago when I started working in the county jail. My full-time job, as Rico said, is in the county jail, where before COVID, I oversaw and developed programs for those that are in custody in the county jail. Since COVID, it's been a huge transition. We have no programs in the jail right now, but we have implemented video visiting, and that's been a huge part of my responsibility to make sure that that program goes as smoothly as possible. I do a lot of things outside of my full-time job. I am currently part of a women's leadership collective program through Columbia University in New York City. I also recently started a healing circle virtually for moms whose children have been stolen from by the foster system. I do a lot of healing work in the community, across the country, really, at this point, and also in the jail, as I said, here in San Francisco. But I've also had the opportunity, again, before COVID, to oversee programs at San Quentin, working primarily with the 18 to 25-year-olds there. We had a weekly group. And then I also did a lot of work with the what we call Kit Kat, the men who were sentenced to life, who received life sentences as juveniles, and also doing some work with the men, preparing them to go to the parole board. So I wear many, many hats, and I do many, many different things.
Man, that's powerful. And today, as we start this conversation, everybody take a second to share the video. We want to get as many people we can in the conversation. We'll have our question and answers open in our chat. And again, if you have something that you want to talk about, because today's conversation, we're talking about the families who lost someone to violence, tragedy in our community. Maybe that's you, or maybe you experienced and you want to bring up something that you wanted to talk about. Definitely raise your hand. If you're in the Zoom chat, we'll pull you up on the live. And then in our group, the comments in the chat will keep going on. If you guys have questions or you want to throw something out there, we'll be checking that and trying to get that in the conversation. But with that being said, this tragedy that we talking about, the tragedies in our community, is ongoing, especially from violence. And Ayoola, I wanted to introduce you and just give people a background of what you went through as a mom, and then we'll jump into the conversation. But kind of give people a background of, like, because I know you're on both sides of it. So go ahead and let them know on both sides of where you at when it comes to this healing process and doing a loss.
Okay. Well, I came into the healing space it was 2009, but it's important that I give the background of who I am prior to becoming a survivor, prior to doing healing work. I have been working in the punishment system since 1981, and I've done just a myriad of different things within the punishment system, always working with those who are responsible parties, those who are accused. I've been an investigator, I've been a mitigation specialist, I've worked with death row inmates on their appeals. And at the time of our first tragedy in my family, I was actually working as a private investigator in trial on a capital murder case out of Alameda County. And it was January 30th, 2009, that my oldest son survived 17 gunshot wounds, and his friend was murdered that night. And I know this conversation is primarily geared toward those who have lost loved ones to violence, but it's also important to talk about those that survived violence, because that is a journey, a healing journey in and of itself. So like I said, that was January 30th, 2009. Obviously, we're coming up on the 11th anniversary of that, 12th anniversary of that. And 15 months later, on Mother's Day, 2010, my bonus son was murdered. He was 19 years old. And it, there's really no words to describe how that has impacted our family. We literally were really just getting back to what I call our new normalcy after my oldest son's harm. And really for myself as a mom, really beginning to exhale. I can speak endlessly on the ways that trauma impacts my ability to mother, impacts how I think, how I approach my kids and their safety after that initial harm happened. And then, like I said, Mother's Day 2010, my middle son was killed. And on February 2nd of 2013, my godson was killed by a drunk driver. So we're talking about three traumas and tragedies that impacted my family within a very, very short period of time, less than a little bit over four years time. And it has been a journey. It has been a long journey, a tough journey. And contrary to what some people believe, the amount of time that has passed doesn't it doesn't make it any different. There's still good days and bad days and worse days. This month is always a tough month for us. All three of my son's birthdays are this month, as well as my birthday. And it's also the anniversary of my son being shot and his friend being killed. Holidays are always tough, but just any family event is tough. My son and his wife recently bought a home. And as we were all over there the first weekend that they moved into their new home, there's always somebody missing. And I think that that's part of the harm and trauma that people don't always think about. But the healing journey really has, it's been good. You know, I'm grateful that I never went through the anger stage. People talk about the 5 stages of grief, and I was never angry. Obviously, I was hurt, I was devastated. I went through a myriad of emotions over a long period of time, but anger wasn't one of them. And oftentimes people ask me, well, they find it unbelievable, but they also ask me, why wasn't I angry? And the answer is pretty straightforward. Because I had been doing work in the punishment system for so long, I understand trauma. And I understand that nobody is born a shooter. And the night my oldest son was shot, as I was driving to the hospital, and I didn't have any information other than he had been shot and what hospital he was at, I began praying for my son. And I also began praying for those who had harmed him. I had no information on, was it one person? Was it more than one person? But I did begin to pray. And the reason why is because I began thinking, what happened to this person? So I always ask, what happened? How do you go from being an infant to a toddler to a school age kid to a teenager to a shooter? And we know that even these days, sometimes the teenagers are the shooter. What happens to somebody in their development that oftentimes they've been harmed, and that then manifests in them harming other people? And because I had that knowledge from doing the work that I've done for so many years, that was those were my thoughts from the onset of with all of the incidents.
Man, that's very powerful. And as we jump further into this conversation, we do have another guest coming on a little later. You know, these conversations are difficult. You know, we had some other guests who wanted to come on and just emotionally they couldn't, you know, get there. And we thank you for having the courage, you know, being a mother to lose their kid and have other kids deal with violence in our community. And I think that's one of the big issues. But having this conversation is important because I think the perspective of me and Rico, when we was looking at this, is how do we get community to have the compassion and understand what our families are going through when they suffer loss? Because I know um, when the tragedy happened, everybody's there and up in arms. You know, the funeral service, the candle lights, the news media, sometimes everybody's there, you know. But I also want the community to understand, like you said, it's a long journey. There's good days, bad days. You know, after all of that happened, you know, the support that's needed, you know, and then having a conversation as me and Rico, we get close to bringing our district attorney on here, having some real conversation with people so that they understand the things that is needed, you know, because a lot of times they have victim support. And I know our DA is big on victim support and making sure that victims get supported. But a lot of time we hear from the community that the support is not there, right? And how do we make this a collective where all community gets behind our families and have that compassion? Because a lot of times in our community, you know, if it's not happening to us, we don't engage, right? And then the first time something do happen to us, we want to engage and we're angry and we're mad. And I see it all the time from people I know who lost their child to violence. They're very angry and frustrated, right? And we just want to be able to provide a platform to help them get it off their chest and have that space where it's safe, but you can say what you feel authentically, because I think our community needs to hear this. And because it's so easy to pop up and be there when a tragedy happened. But you have to deal with this forever. It never ends. And how do we support you? How do we get behind you? And how do we get the people in the community to understand the compassion that's needed to be able to work with you as families?
That sure was a lot. Let me start by saying that healing has to happen before tragedies occur. There's so much healing that needs to take place in our families and our communities prior to any tragedy that happens. Because if we can heal within our families and if we can heal within our communities, then perhaps we can avoid some of these tragedies from happening in the first place. So if you grew up in an area where it is the norm to hear gunshots, to know of people who have been shot, to know of people who have been harmed, and believe that that's just the way it goes, that's problematic. I was talking to a young man who I've been working with who's in prison in Michigan, and he was talking about he just recently got to a new prison, and he was talking about surveying the land and seeing who was there because of beef that he had on the street, but he'd been incarcerated for 22 years. And the universality of beef, right? And he talked about beefing with neighborhoods where he didn't even understand what the beef is about, but because he's from one neighborhood and somebody's from another neighborhood, they're beefing. That's the exact same thing that's going on here in our community, Southern Cal, everywhere, right? And so how do we address that? How do we get to young people and help them to heal? And it's bigger than just violence. It's about poverty, it's about education, it's about access to mental health care. We're seeing more where we're talking about mental health more. We're having a little bit more access to mental health, but even within access to mental health, we have to have therapists who are culturally competent. I can't tell you the number of therapists that my children and I encountered who just could not even understand the things that we have been through. And so it's just such a bigger conversation than any one event. And I am absolutely not minimizing anybody's experiences or their harm, but I do want to name that the healing has to start within our families and within our communities. Um, and then you ask, what do we need? I will say that everybody's healing journey is different. I was fortunate enough to have community. I had literally three different church families because of our travels and are living in different areas in the Bay Area. I have my San Francisco family because I was born and raised there. I have a close knit group of friends, and so we had a lot of support, and we had a lot of community, not just when it happened in the ensuing days and months, but always. I joke about when my oldest son was shot and not really knowing what the three little kids were. I just knew that I got a phone call from one of our church members who said, "Don't worry about them. We got them. You be at the hospital and do everything that you need to do there. And don't worry about the other kids." And we have to go back to community. We have to go back to being community. And I heard many, many, many years ago, I heard Dick Gregory say, we got to stop being scared of our young people. And I think part of the reason why we don't have community like we used to is because our young people are different. They're becoming more violent at younger ages, and the climate is different. And yet we can't be afraid of them. We have to meet them where they are and embrace them. I work a lot with the 18 to 25-year-olds, both at the county jail and in state prison. And that's a population that a lot of people don't want to be bothered with. The narrative is always, those youngsters are off the hook, those youngsters this and those youngsters that. And I just say, I don't know how you were at 18 to 25, but I was a piece of work. And I don't have the nerve or the luxury of giving up on young people. And so it's so important that we meet them where they are and we love on them, and we have a balance of nurturing them and supporting them, and also calling them out when they're acting crazy. And you can call them out when they're acting crazy when you've built a relationship with them. So that's another part of of community. And lastly, as it goes back to when tragedies occur, if you're someone who wants to support someone who has lost, especially a child, oftentimes people ask or say that they don't know what to say. And I'll say, I can't tell you exactly what to say, but I can tell you what not to say. Stop asking a bunch of questions about what happened. Stop asking a bunch of questions about the details. Definitely stop asking what they were doing. I can't tell you the number of times somebody asked me what my boys were doing. And my response with my little smart mouth is they were getting shot. That's what they were doing. It doesn't matter what they were doing. And that's a really good segue into law enforcement and district attorneys, and even the experiences that I had at the hospital. Somehow, our children are always thought to be complicit in the harm that they've experienced. I have yet to see where the response is that of just straight empathy and compassion. Um, from the surgeon who operated on my son to the detectives that were responsible for the so-called investigation, it was always about what was he doing and why was he where he was and things of that nature. So um, I would like to see better training with first responders, um, with veteran law enforcement officers. I had an opportunity to talk to the chief of police of Oakland not long after my son was killed. And one of the things I shared with her is the nonchalant attitude of law enforcement. And they don't get to act like it's routine, even though it's routine for them and they've worked on hundreds of homicide cases. This is my son we're talking about. And so I think there needs to be a lot of work done with law enforcement, like I said, with first responders. How dare the surgeon lecture me on the statistics of Black males being shot in Oakland when you just operated on my son? That's not even your job, but that's what happened. So there's a lot of work to be done with everyone when we talk about supporting victims and supporting survivors. Because of my work in the punishment system, I knew that I had to protect my son when it came time for him to be questioned. And when law enforcement came to the hospital, I did not allow them to have a conversation with him. And I explained to them that he's on a morphine drip and what he's saying is not making sense. So he absolutely cannot have a conversation with law enforcement. And how many families don't know that you can say no, that you can say, I'm not refusing, I'm saying not now. And what I did was contacted an attorney who I used to work with many years ago, told him the situation and asked for his advice, because too many times I've personally seen where somebody is a victim of a shooting and then somehow becomes arrested because, like I said, his friend did die that night. And so my friend, the attorney, agreed to meet with my son and myself. We had a long conversation, and he agreed to be the liaison between my son and Oakland PD. And when he contacted Oakland PD and said that he wanted a list of questions that they were going to ask my son and a guarantee in writing that my son was not going to be arrested, Oakland PD was not willing to do that. And so there was no conversation. And subsequently, Oakland PD told the victims of violent crime that my son didn't cooperate, so he didn't receive any services. Those are the kind of things that have to change, because there's too much power in law enforcement and who's able to receive services from victims of violent crime and who is not. I believe that that has changed under the current district attorney in San Francisco, and also in Los Angeles, but that's just 2 counties in this state, much less in the country.
Rico, you wanted to ask something, Rico? I know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just wanted to 100% agree with you, especially as it relates to dealing with the trauma and the things that we deal with. Like it has to definitely be ahead of the actual violence. I think that a lot of times where our families going through a lot of this stuff, like most families not educated in the capacity that you're educated around a lot of this stuff. So you know how to actually deal with, not only want to say deal with, how to process it a lot differently compared to other people. Because in our community, we're not taught none of this stuff. And I think on a lot of phone calls with the work that I do in dealing with mothers and fathers and community members who are dealing in tragedy like gun violence or just death in general, a lot of times like we don't have those culturally competent therapists or culturally competent healers, in our community to come out. Like, I mean, we do have them. I mean, they say they culturally competent, they look like us, but when it's time for tragedy, no one coming out. Like, no one comes and support the community. And it's like you have community members supporting community members during a time of harm. So then everyone just learn how to cope. So we're just coping with with what we're feeling. And then when it comes back up, that's when people react differently, off of coping with things. Because I know a bunch of young people that I've been dealing with, a lot of them are numb to violence. They're numb, like they really don't. They don't have that, like we at the funeral, and they want to numb the pain as much as possible. Don't see them cry as much. They've gone to over 20 something funerals before they've turned 15 years old, and after a while, death just become a norm. It become the normality. So like it goes back to what you're saying. How do we bring our community back to normality so that we are able to heal? I've lost family members. I lost a cousin a couple of years ago to gun violence, shot by BART police. And luckily, I know the process. Luckily, I know someone I could talk to and start the healing. Luckily, I was able to refer my aunt to someone and engage in conversation, and family engage in conversation around the situation so that we can release all of the toxicity that is inside, because some of it becomes toxic. You holding on to it, and you just holding on to that stuff, no matter what the intent is, it still becomes toxic because at some point it's gonna come out, and most times it come out in a negative way. So I
Absolutely.
commend you for your words, because it is so deep on how we definitely got to heal, and we got to start the healing before the violence,
And,
opposed to.
and I just want to jump in and say that there's a difference, a huge difference between coping and healing. And
Right.
so as we talk about healing, what has been my journey? um, I do a lot of writing, and you touched on something, Rico, about that toxicity living in your body, that energy living in your body. So how do you get that energy out of your body? One of the ways that I constantly get it out of my body is by writing. Writing is something that's simple, that's available to everybody, that just writing the things that I'm feeling. Last year, for the first time, and it had been 10 years since my son was murdered. It was the first time I was able to write about that weekend. And even as I was writing it, I was reliving it, but being aware that, this is what's happening in my body, even as I'm writing it, and what that experience is like. So I encourage people to do writing. I encourage people to speak about their experiences, but it's important that you speak in safe places. I don't need to speak in places that are going to fuel anger, right? Because that's not going to help with healing. I do a lot of circle work, like I said. There's an amazing, and I use the word amazing all the time. There's an amazing group of young people out of New York. Shout out to Holla, How Our Lives Link All Together. And they have a youth component, the youth organizing committee. I hope I got that right. but they do circles with young people. And that's one of the things I would like to see once, COVID is over. I would love to facilitate more circles with young people, because that's really, I can't even explain the magic that happens, the healing that occurs when you build a safe container where young people can really be open and vulnerable and talk about their experiences and their pain. Oftentimes, it's been my experience, as you spoke about, young people going to so many funerals, is that there is a certain facade that you have to put on around your peers. Um, there's a certain amount of strength that you have to display. I made it very clear when I went through what I went through with my boys. The next person who tells me to be strong is going to get punched in the face. Like, stop it. Why do we tell people to be strong? What is that about? Because that's not really about me. That's about something that you want to say because you don't know what else to say. So my son is dead and you're telling me to be strong? Like, you sound crazy right now. So again, can we have honest conversations about the things that we do that we shouldn't do? One of the things, when we were preparing for my son's funeral, my oldest son made it clear that everybody was gonna be dressed. Like, there's not gonna be the t-shirts with his picture on it. That's some of the ways that young people or people in general normalize it, right? When you look 20 years ago, 30 years ago, our parents didn't do that. We didn't do that. And so how do we stop normalizing it? How do we guard our hearts? I stopped going after my son died. I stopped going to young people's services unless they died of something other than murder, because it's too much. And because I stopped doing that, I'm not desensitized to it. And I can count on one hand the number that I've gone to in the last 10 years. And sometimes I don't even go to other services because it's too much. And so we have to be willing to create different spaces and do things differently, and not and I will say in a minute, it's not normal. So stop saying that it's normal. And just because, and this is something I got from Omega, with Dr. Marshall talk about insidiousness. Just because something happens over and over again and it appears normal, that doesn't make it normal. And when I'm working with young people, I'll take a piece of paper and a pencil and I'll put a dot on the piece of paper, and I'll tell them that's your neighborhood. The rest of the paper is the rest of the world. So just because it happens where this little dot happens doesn't mean that it happens the way it happens all over the world. And so, just exposing young people to different things is important as well.
Yeah, because it's funny you say that. Sometimes people finding the words to like what do you say to a parent, or you say to someone who have lost a child? I think when I started this work maybe 7 years ago, crisis response, and you're trying to and I think it'd be good intent, but sometimes you got to figure out what's the learning curve, because my friend, his name was Ikena, he passed away in Bayview over the PlayStation. I don't know if anybody heard about that. It was a PlayStation. He ended up getting killed, and he's Nigerian, and I went to his mother house, and I knew him since he was like one of my first case management gigs at Ella Hill Hutch. He was like one of the first youth that came to come see me, and he was like my client. I mean, I love this dude. And I went to the house, and at first the mom wasn't responsive, and then I told her my real name, which is Nigerian, and she kind of embraced me, and I told her, how are you? And like she went completely off on me. Like I mean, and I didn't understand. Like I was so butthurt behind it. Like why'd she go off on me? She like, what you mean am I all right? I just lost my son. Like what? Like, she like went there with me. And in that moment, I could have, just kind of been butthurt and left. But I think like the learning curve was I needed to go through that. I needed to feel what I felt in that moment. So when I am dealing with people, sometimes it's best just to do the work, or it's best just to be there in case somebody do need you. Because sometimes we are taught the words to say, like be strong. Like in my opinion, it is strong to grieve. It's strong to be able to let out whatever emotion that you need to let out in front of people without trying to suppress it and hold it in. Be strong. Man, be strong. What is being strong? What's the real definition of that in those type of moments? So I just wanted to kind of go back to what you were saying when it relates to, like, what do you say to a parent or someone who's going through that? Because 7 years ago, I didn't know what to say. Now I just kind of go into it with more of a listening ear, and hear something that they say and say, you know what, let me go and just hurry up and go do that. Let me go do this. Let me go do that. And then come back with whatever I need to do, instead of just saying, are you okay? And trying to console it. Like, cause sometimes it backfired on me in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And you learn, unfortunately I learned by experience. Is there something that you need, right? That's a better question. Have you eaten? Because again, most of the time you're moving and you're not eating and you're not feeling it. And again, don't bring them a whole plate, but maybe just something small, because you do have to keep up your strength, which is different than being strong, you know. Um, what, and asking, sometimes people don't know what they need, but just asking what you need as opposed to assuming what is needed. Um, if there's other children, making sure that somebody's checking with them, what do you need? Can I get you anything? Because it's a lot. It's a whole lot. One of the things I did want to mention in terms of my healing, I was focused on the healing of my family from the beginning, and I was not interested in seeing any more Black bodies behind bars or behind walls. And I've caught a lot of flack from that, because people are like, what do you mean you didn't want anybody arrested? Because I know that that's not the answer. And that's not saying that I wanted to give anybody a pass. I just didn't want to be complicit in the another mother losing her sons to a system that's not designed to help heal anybody. But like I said, my focus was always on my family and the healing of my family. And it's not to say that I haven't supported other families who have wanted, quote unquote, justice, but that's another conversation that I think should be had with law enforcement and with district attorneys' offices, because I've also seen where all this energy is placed into the arrest and conviction and sentencing of the responsible party. And then once all that happens, the family, particularly the parents, are left with all the grief and all the pain that they never really experienced, because they were so focused on finding out who did it and finding out what happened and all the things. And then the district attorney goes on about their next case. And I actually have one person who I work with who literally fell apart and started drinking and just did all this self-destructive behavior, because now 2 years later, she had never dealt with the loss. And so it's important that we kind of cover all bases, if you will, in terms of what people want, what they think they want, and the reality of what the punishment system does. And I don't try to discourage anybody who wants to see somebody arrested and all that. I knew for myself, I wasn't trying to sit in a courtroom and see 16 by 20 pictures of my deceased son in the morgue. And that's what happens in a lot of trials, right? I wasn't trying to sit there and listen to the details of his injuries. And that's some of the things that families aren't prepared for as they go through the process in the punishment system.
I think that's a good point that you brought up, and I want to hone back in on these young people because I don't want to lose that point for the community to understand this, because I think this is an ongoing conversation that we need to have, especially when you talk about the village concept. And I know we talked a lot about it last Sunday with our fathers and mothers. We need that village concept. It has to happen. But I think when you hold in on something about the young people, I've been honing in on this and I've been pushing it. I'm going to keep pushing it in 2021 that it's time for the elders in the community to listen to the young people. And the way we evoke change with the young people is we have to listen to them, we have to validate them, and be willing and be open to work with them to make change. And a lot of this anger, fear, and pain that they dealing with in the community is it's the culture that we are brought up on. And one of the things that I wanted to bring out to the community is has this culture that we've accepted in the Black community, this gang life, this music industry, this no snitching, and all of this stuff that we hone in and we hold on as our culture and our code. Has this culture and this lifestyle come back to affect us and impact us in the community in ways that is tearing our families apart? We're losing more people. And how do we change that thought process? Because I think that's where we at. This ideal and then the continues of the violence and the things that's going on in the community, with being desensitized. And I know for me, I stopped going to funerals a long time ago as well. I mean, growing up where we grew up in, I mean, I went to hundreds of funerals. And I mean, after the first five I went to, I cried. And after that, I couldn't even cry no more. And, part of it too is how do we as community be responsible when these tragedies happen in our community, when this violence happen in our community? And I go back to leadership. Because again, as leaders of the community, when we have the young people, is when we got to reach them. Mm-hmm. And I know Jeff Branner came on here and talked about it when we talked to the pastors of the community. We had to have this honest conversation because I couldn't take it going to community funerals and the pastors have the voice, have the ears of the young people, and they lying to the young people. Mm-hmm. And they telling the young people, oh, this kid was a good kid and all of this. And we got to stop that. Because that is also continuing the problem when it comes to these young people and they dying in these services. We got to be real as a community and start telling these young people, hey, little Pookie and Ray Ray was out here doing X, Y, and Z. And the results of their behavior and their lifestyle is what got them here. It's uncomfortable to say it. But again, if we're really trying to lead the community and impact our young people, we have to have those honest conversations. And when we have them, because we don't have them much. That's the thing. The work we do inside of the jail, Ayoola, we got those kids. They not high. They not on drugs. They listening. They thinking. They total different kids. Mm-hmm. Now they back in the community. They sipping syrup. They popping pills. They drinking. They smoking. Everything around the community is going on. Everybody got guns around them. Everybody this. Everybody hostile. I mean, when do we get to talk to these kids? So again, when we have the opportunity, that's where the real work happening. We have to be leaders in the community to step up. We got to call out our wrongs as well as our right, because it's too easy to point the finger and say it's the system, it's the police, it's this. Again, if we're talking about village and community concept, we have to be involved and we got to take the initiative to do it. So wanted to throw that out there. We got to keep these young people involved. And this culture thing, and what do you think about this culture thing that I'm talking about? How the upbringing of our young people is. Or Rico, you could jump in with that. But this culture that we accept and we promote and we believe is what it is, we have to change that.
John, I just wanted to say like just to what you said, like a lot of it is systemically. I mean, and I know that we do have to address the systemic issues that face our community, the crack epidemic, all the stuff that has happened. We have to address it because with every cause there is an effect. So with every cause there's an effect. This is the result of a lot of stuff that has happened over a very long time. But as a Black community, at what point are we going to come together and say, what is the counterintelligence to any intelligence that the system have against us? And I think part of that is the reason, because like when you really think about it, they got us with the movies, right? I really wasn't seeing too many people talking about like real deal gang banging until like certain movies came out, right? When we know like there was a lot of boys clubs, period, even dating back to long time ago, but real gang banging, I didn't start really seeing that until Colors, until, some of these other movies, then the music industry, and we bite off into it, right? And instead of having a counterintelligence to it, saying, you know what, we ain't finna we ain't biting off into that. We're gonna create our own. So that way we're creating a narrative. Like a lot of this stuff, it only continues because the narrative that's being pushed is the agenda of the system. You know, and I understand what you're saying, but I definitely, like, we definitely got to create some type of counterintelligence to combat a lot of the stuff that's happening. Like, cause like long time ago, I remember, I mean, and I think everybody on here remember long time ago, like the family used to say, "Oh, in my community, in my community, in my community." And this when I was younger, in my community. Then at some point it changed and we stopped saying community, we started saying neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I remember that. Like, and to me, like, why are we saying neighborhood? Like, to me, that word just never made sense, because I'd rather be communal with my community instead of being a neighbor with a hood on. I don't know. It didn't. A lot of people said I was crazy, but I was young and I was like, that don't make sense. Why am I? Whatever. So, so like to me, it's like a lot of that stuff happened, but there was no counterintelligence to it. Like it was nothing to help steer the community back focus. And I think like that's part of it, is like, how do we all come together, healers? Ayoola, she does amazing stuff in the county jail. And my little bro, Cameron, he definitely, you know, I told him that you was gonna be on today. He wanted me to tell you he loved you. Thank you for the 5 years of supporting him. You know, so you know, and he had a little, you know, had a little tears in I could hear it in his voice, like the little, you know, like he was watering up, and you know, the emotion that he had, because like you were definitely 100% there for him. So thank you so much for that also.
So everything that you all are saying is all true. There's accountability and responsibility. There are the economics of it. There's the lack of community. And it was, so how did it all happen? And you mentioned, you know, gang banging and colors and things like that, but it was more than that. It was the crack epidemic. Now, I'm probably the oldest one on here. I'm about to be 58 in 3 weeks. And when I grew up in San Francisco, there were um, neighborhoods, right? And but you can go anywhere, and any rivalry was about sports and schools, right? And then crack happened, and there was money. There was money to be made, and then everything became territorial, right? You can't come over here selling because this is our area, this is our turf, this is our block. So that was a contributory factor. When you talk about the music, it was economics. It was a way for people to get paid. So if I can be a rapper, whatever I'm rapping about, then I'm going to have access to some money that I'm not going to have access to if I get a job working at McDonald's on minimum wage. There's a lack of education. What's being taught in the schools is still the lies that were being taught when we were in school, but who's countering that? Right? And my generation has some responsibility in it because we were the first generation to start smoking crack. And I am so grateful and thankful that that was never my thing. And so I was able to raise my kids, although they went to public schools, they still got the balance of culture and act right at home because I was there. So there are a lot of reasons why our communities and our families have been broken down, but it's not irreparable. So, what if we made a proposal to probation that when young people are on probation, their community service is going to an educational program? Because once you have knowledge of self, and that was my awakening when I was about 14, 15 years old, I was in this summer program. They used to have the Mayor's Youth Program. The summer program, we were hoodwinked because it was really summer school, but we were getting paid to learn about our history and our culture. And when you understand who you are and that you come from greatness, like you're going to hold your head a little higher. When you understand that who you think is your enemy has the same struggles as you may look at things a little bit differently. So, how can we educate our young people to truth? How can we get them to know that like I said, they come from greatness. They come from a lineage of survivors, of people who persevered. Um, there's a lot that we have to do, and we got to deal with the historical trauma. You know, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how it's easy for us to hate somebody who looks just like us, because really we hate ourselves. We don't talk about that. So there's a lot that we can do if we have spaces to do it. And the most important thing to me in working with young people is meeting them where they are. And you're going to hear me saying that over and over and over again. There was a young man who is in county, and um, he was getting ready to ask his girl to do something crazy on the video visit. And I went over to the pod and I told him, knock it off. And then when I go back to, because I have to observe the video visits, he calling me everything but a child of God, right? And so I waited until the next day, and I went there and had a conversation with him. And I explained to him, I'm doing you a favor by telling you to knock it off so that you don't get in the jackpot because you violated the rules of the video visit, right? And then we had this whole conversation. I asked him, how many Black women do you see here? And he said 2. And I said, exactly. So how are you going to talk crazy about one of the 2 people who look like you, right? And so again, when I have issues, or when those guys have issues with me, I have so many choices of what I can do. And they're never the things that I do. I always have a conversation with them. I always pull them into a room and get them right together. And then I'll hold it against them, right? And by the time I finished talking to this young man, you know what he said? Ayoola, do you think you can come check on me sometimes? Absolutely. Despite you was calling me everything but a child of God yesterday, right? And so just meeting people where they are, because they hurting. And oftentimes, and we could have a whole, and I'm sure you guys did, but a whole conversation on how so many of our young men view women, and therefore how they treat women. And how do you combat that, right? How do I combat that working in a facility of all men, the majority of them Black and brown, and about a third of them 18 to 25? It's exhausting, but I'm here for it.
Right. Hey, Rico, I just pulled up Nate. He had his hand raised. If you could give him co-host so you can have his camera and video up. While Nate's coming up.
I'm already up.
Okay. If anybody have anything they want to say in the Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring Nate in, and then
And are you guys reading the comments? Because I don't have my glasses on. I can't say anything.
Yeah, I'll get the comments. We'll start.
Yeah,
pulling
we on the comments.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead, Nate.
Hey guys, good afternoon. I got a few different viewpoints on a lot of different things. My sister, you know, I applaud her for being the don't want to see you know, another young man or whoever prosecuted or whatever. But it hits differently when you have a, you know, a 6-year-old nephew that's murdered on the street for no reason. So I want to see whatever happened to whoever, you know, did that to that 6-year-old. But that's up, you know, that's either here or there. I got to come from the other side of the conversation where, you know, we got a lot of programs that's geared for kids that are on probation, that are in trouble. But what about the kids who are doing good? Those kids, there are very few programs and jobs access for those kids that are doing good. And those kids tend to turn and go the other way. This is my 30th year working in the youth development profession. I've been in San Francisco all my life, and I've seen that happen a lot. The system, you know, seems to gear towards, I'm all for the rehab or young men, but we got to put the same resources that we put in those kids being bad into those same kids that are doing good or that is straddling the fence a little bit. You know, those are my thoughts on it. And, you know, I'm just happy to be a part of the conversation. Thanks, John. Thanks, Rico.
Hey, Nate, before you go off, or you can hang up here if you want, Nate, and chime
No,
in.
I'll stay on. I'm gonna stay
Yeah.
on.
Uh, you know, you brought up something interesting about your nephew, and it's kind of a publicized situation. And I had somebody text me about this, and Ayoola touched it about some parents being angry and they take out on law enforcement. But I want to ask this question to you, and this is a real thing, and I talked about it, and where it's coming from is about this culture thing. When we're in a community, we're programmed to not deal with law enforcement in our community, the Black and Brown community, right? Because of our code, right? As community, we get frustrated with police because they feel like this a blue wall and they stick together, right? But we do the same thing in the community, right? But then when a parent or a family loses someone to violence, we want the person to be prosecuted. Now we need police. But then the code we live by doesn't give the police the tools to take those people off the street. If that's what we're going to live by, how do we as community then accountability step up and deal with these individuals that community know are perpetrating crimes to hurt our families? How do we do that?
That's a, I think that's the $1 million question in it all. And you're right. People don't seem to get on that side until it happens to them. And I definitely agree. But, you know, um, but then there's a job what they get paid for as well. And you always say that you need the public's help, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you got all these different methods, and I don't want to get in the middle of all that part, but I definitely get your point in that, and that is $1 million question and the elephant in the room on and it doesn't, you know, it's all good until it ain't good. You know what I'm saying? Um, that's the way I've seen it over the years play out. But you're right, that is a big question.
Yeah, and I understand, coming up in the community, I understand why. But again, we around these conversations in these different places, and I hear law enforcement saying, "Well, like, how are we supposed to do our job?" Right? They already don't like us. Nobody want to say nothing. I can't help the family out, but then all we want to do is lash at them, right? And I get why, And then we got the attitude from some of our law enforcement, with all of this defunding the police stuff going on. They don't want to work. They don't want to do nothing. Some of them, not all of them. And then we got the community where we got all this chaos going on. So community policing is needed. I think the biggest conversation, I know we have the DA coming on, and I think, Rico, this is a conversation that, and I know you touched on it, Nate, when we talked last time about how many years can we get community people to get into the police so we can have real people policing, right? Even if a person had a record, like, do we reform it in a way that after 20 years, if their records is a misdemeanor, to have real community policing? I mean, I think that conversation has to happen because that's part of the problem. We can't trust the law enforcement because most of the people don't look like us. We know people, like you said, that's been in the community that can really impact the community at a law enforcement standpoint. But the way the system is set up, those people in the community who change, who can actually have uh, a good impact on the community from that law enforcement standpoint, can't get the opportunity because maybe a hiccup or something they did in the past. And I think we need to really have that conversation. What do you guys think about that, Rico?
I'm sorry, but I definitely, John, I've been a straight advocate of that to get more community involved and maybe find some kind of loophole or something to get these people the proper credential or whatever to make things happen. And like the sister said before, it's about relationships. And I believe, coming out the academy or whatever they're doing, I think there needs to be a longer stay in that community where they're going to work in before they be put on the street. I know the officer that was involved in the shooting in Double Rock, he was only on duty, 2 months, 3 months, something before, he shot through the window. And, I mean, just being in that community, I think officers should be in that community for at least a year before he's turned over to the streets. You know what I'm saying? Learn that community. It takes more than a month or two to learn a community. And I don't know what planet or what people, contrary to what people think, you know, it takes a long time to forge and build relationships. You know what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
relationships are everything. And I'm glad the sister touched on that.
I want to just jump in and say that so I guess so I was raised in San Francisco and my dad was a police officer in San Francisco. And one of the biggest problems and the biggest differences was exactly what you're saying, Nate, is the police aren't from the communities that they police. You know, when I was growing up, and my first of all, my dad and his brother were one of the first Black police officers in San Francisco. So that was a whole situation. But they lived in the community where they were cops. And not only did they live there, they went to church there. My dad was a football coach. And so it was community. Everybody knew everybody. And you know, now you have the majority, and I don't know what percentage it is, but I would say it's probably 80% of SFPD does not live in San Francisco. They're not from San Francisco. So now you have people who don't know anything about the communities in San Francisco. And like you said, they go to the academy and then they go through their training and or field training, and then they're placed in a community that they don't know anything about. And oftentimes we talked earlier about cultural competence. If you never been around Black people and now you put in a community where it's all Black people, I can't tell you the number of problems that arise even with me being a Black woman and dealing with white people because they don't understand our culture. And I have this conversation with the guys in custody. You know, when we're having a conversation and they're, you know, how we get, we loud and we demonstrative and we all this. And I'm like, hey, dial it down a little bit because it's not bothering me. But somebody else who you the same way with is going to feel like you intimidated or threatened or whatever when you just expressing yourself. And so these are all factors that contribute to issues with law enforcement. And the other thing I want to say about that is just to piggyback on what John Henry was saying is, you know, as Black people, as communities, we can't have it both ways. We can't pick and choose when we want law enforcement to do their jobs. So my son was shot 29 days after Oscar Grant was killed. And like I said, his friend died that night. Wasn't no outrage from the community. My middle son was killed in a club full of people. Ain't nobody shot. Y'all don't have no video footage? Nobody saw anything? So again, we have some onus on what's going on in our communities as well, because again, we want to be all mad and outraged, as we should be, when the police kill us, but we want to handle things different when we kill each other. And don't get me wrong, I do not believe that Pookie and Ray Ray gonna stop killing each other because we had a march, but I do believe that we got to be honest about how we look at harm in our communities as well. It shouldn't matter who's on the other end of the gun or whatever. Dead is dead, and a loss is a loss.
Go ahead, Rico.
No, I just kind of wanted to touch back on what Nate had asked or what Nate had said because I don't want it to go like not addressed, especially dealing with young people who are doing amazing things in our community and how a lot of times that those funds aren't 100% targeted towards them. You do have individuals like Nate who do deal with young people who scale a fence or who live a certain lifestyle, and those people they never really get it. I mean, in my opinion, and I know a lot of it has to do with numbers, the number game. A kid that's more consistent 9 times out of 10 in the program I would rather have that kid because that's the one who gonna show up every single day. They're gonna make me look good and they're gonna make my program look good compared to youth that, other people might be working with and they're inconsistent in the program, and you really trying your hardest or whatever. But I 100% agree with you, Nate. I think that we do need to come up with something better than that. But then I also want to touch on community policing. I think a lot of community policing, even when it comes to just regular officers, is a lot of this work is based on perception. When you look at the Police Bill of Rights, their law is dictated based on their personal perspective and how they view things.
Mhm.
So this person can be becoming aggressive, and their perspective can be saying that aggression is trying to kill me. And
Right.
based on my perspective, I can now kill you because I was afraid, right? So and that's how they react also, because like a lot of them I did a lineup with some officers, and what a lineup is, it's not the typical lineup what we think it is, but it's a staff meeting and you meet officers. A lot of them was from Concord, never grew up around in communities like ours, never grew up around brown people. One guy, he said he was from Boston. So I'm saying that to say is, if you grow up in communities that's not like the community that you're serving, 9 times out of 10, the perception that you get is the perception that TV give you, or whatever the narrative that already been given to you. So I went to an officer and asked them, what do they talk about in police training? They talk about Bayview a lot and how violent Bayview is. So when someone rode through Bayview, and the perception in my mind is that this community is already violent, as a as a person who grew up in Concord around different people, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna be scared to death.
Right.
So that's a huge part of this is perception, and how do we help them or help officers change their perception by bringing on officers who actually come from our community, because like they bring Black people on, but then a lot of times those Black people were the same. Those are Black people who didn't come from our communities or were sheltered and they went to private school, and now they got a whole different perspective of the community. You know what I mean? So like, or they have a different air about who they are. You know what I'm saying? I see it a lot. So which is weird, and I don't even want to say it like that, but it is like that. So how do we help change that within those type of departments and within those systems?
And in the meantime, can we partner with law enforcement with their trainings and be active participants in their trainings and educate them about our communities from our perspective, and do and interaction with us from, have interactions with us before they get to the community, because we're the ones in the trenches working with the community. And so there's things that we know that they don't know, and so in the interim, can we do something like that? I think, we have to be innovative in what we are in our ask for with different agencies and entities. And I also want to say to the brother Nate that you are absolutely right about the good kids, the support for the good kids. I raised a couple, not all of them, but a couple of them. And there are, there's not resources, there's not resources. Even my 17-year-old, from 5 years old, from 5 to 10, she experienced so much loss and trauma. And there's not a lot of resources. There weren't a lot of resources then for her. And now, as as a 17-year-old, there's even less available to her programs, and she's not system involved, and we don't want her to be. But where can she go? What can we do with her? And the last thing I want to say is, as a challenge, maybe to people who are watching, I have a son who is he's at Davis playing, well, he would have been playing ball except the pandemic. But I can't tell you the number of times I invited people to come to his games and support him in that way. And people be busy. But we'll show up.
I'm one of them.
Right. But But if he is just as impacted, folks is going to show up for his court dates. Folks is going to show up when they get in trouble. And so we have to support young people all the way around. And just as a, all of us, we can all do better and seek out resources and share resources. When we find resources that are for kids who aren't just as impacted or aren't suspended or aren't whatever, share those resources.
Definitely.
Yeah, it goes a little deeper than that. I mean, you definitely going in the right direction, and I know Rico and John and I have talked about this all the time. It's about the people that that the power to be, they fund as well. You know what I'm saying? And then they turn to us to go help them look good by going to they call me up. Hey Nate, we need 3 kids that's on probation. They can get a full-time job. I mean, come on, man. That was your job. That's what you got paid for to do. Then oftentimes, the people that's in the trenches are left trying to clean up their slate. So there's a whole bunch of things that need to be looked at as we move forward. But definitely those kids that are doing good, that's trying to do good, the services are just not there as much as it is for a kid that's on probation. And I think something's wrong with that.
Right. So,
Absolutely. Hi, Miss Maddie.
okay, Miss Maddie's on. I didn't see her. Okay,
Hi,
we'll
Miss
get her.
Maddie.
We're gonna get her on.
Hey, how you
Shamira,
doing?
1 second. Shamira has something, but I want to say this before I lose this thought because y'all know I have a bass brain sometimes, and after 3 seconds, I'll forget it. So hold on 1 second, Shamira. But what I want to say, what Nate was saying is this: it's 3 things. We have to bridge the gap, and I want y'all to hear me. We have to bridge the gap between the young and the old. We have to bridge the gap between community and police. That's what we have to do. And to do that, community wants trust from our law enforcement. And to get trust, law enforcement needs to understand it comes with accountability. And to get accountability from our law enforcement is when misconduct happen, when things happen in the community that's wrong, we have to have the DAs and the people to make sure that they are handled in a way that impacts the community, for the community to have trust to say, hey, we trust that you hear us and you see us. And the way we get there is we have to hold these accountable police when they do this misconduct. We have to change the system with making all the officers have insurance. When they do commit misconduct and they relieve of their duties, we have to strip them of their pension and their retirement, because we know financially that's what keep people in line. And when people know that their retirements and their pensions are going to be attached to it, the attitude that they deal with people in the community will change, I guarantee you. And having insurance is important. If we ask doctors and nurses to carry insurance because they could kill somebody, we need our police to do the same thing. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to Shamira, if anybody else, and then we'll go get Miss Maddie up in here.
Hi, so I wanted to, I have so many agreements with what you guys said and disagreements with what you guys said, but it's because there's different ways to handle certain things. So just to piggyback on what you were saying, John, I would just add, there's also that bridge that we gotta add between the community and our city or local government too. So there's that part. And the reason why I say that, I live in Antioch, so it's Contra Costa County. I know what Rico was talking about with having people from Concord working in all these different areas. One city conference that we went to was because we had already, as voters in our community, had voted for a bill to put more money into the kids in our community. And unbeknownst to us, the city government was taking it away to fund the police. And we had to have a whole discussion about that, and we still didn't win. They still gave more money to police officers because of the idea that there's so many people coming from Oakland, or there's so many people coming from basically the Bay Area coming to move here, because I don't consider this the Bay Area. I don't care what nobody say at me, bro. But Antioch is not the Bay, neither is Pittsburgh. But they have this whole perception of people coming from the Bay Area to here and how we're dirtying up their community so they need more police officers. So there are funds that are being put out there. My disagreement with Nate is the agreement at the same time, and hopefully I'm conveying this in a way. When I put it in the comments, having a community where you have all of these activities for kids in general is good for both at-risk kids and kids that aren't at risk? Because you honestly, what does that really look like? Because even in our community, we see at-risk kids looking a certain way. That means they're acting out, they're, in trouble all the time, they're, they're getting suspended from school, all these things. But I know a bunch of at-risk kids that never got caught, but they were still at risk. They looked real good on paper, but they were doing some messed up stuff behind the scenes. But when you have all of these different, activities for them to do, especially because people are working like crazy now, it's you have to give them something to do. You got to give them somewhere to go. You got to give them somewhere they can feel safe. People are working 2 and 3 jobs at a time per person just to maintain a household. I remember going to a city council meeting in the city, and even though I'm not from the city, I think it's very important just to understand how these different dynamics are working in different communities. And one thing that they talked about is the same thing that we have issues here. It's not affordable either. The housing crisis, not having affordable living situations for teachers to live in the communities that they're teaching in, police officers to live in the communities that they're teaching in. And I have a very different view of the police now as an adult versus I did as a kid. I grew up in Oakland, but also the police officers that were policing us lived there too. So you're not gonna poop where you eat because somebody can show up at your house at any given moment and mess with your wife or your mom or whoever. So the way they treated us when we were younger was very different. That's why I really do believe in not just the police living in the area where they're supposed to be working, coming from the area where they're supposed to be working, but also when I grew up, I knew I was going to get a butt whooping from one end of the street to the other if I messed up. And nowadays, people get real bent out of shape if you just talk to somebody's kid and correct them in public. I don't know you, who you talking to, why you talking to my kid like that? And we talk about that village dynamic so often and how important it is. Also, Ayoola, I do think we as Black people get outraged when it's Black people killing Black people. The problem is, or the difference is, not that it's a problem, it's just a difference that's got to be worked on. Most of the time, if we kill each other, we also get revenge on each other too. So it gets handled in the street. Not that that's a good thing, it's just what it is. It shouldn't be normal. And that's where I think it's different when people say Black people don't get outraged when it's Black on Black crime. We do. We also get arrested, obviously, which because you work in that community. So we get arrested instantly. There's no question about what the repercussions are going to be when we do it to each other. So I get frustrated when Black people say that because it's tearing our community apart to say that because it's not true. We do care, but we're also like pulled in so many different ways emotionally that sometimes we're just numb because, like you said, that's very normal to us. It shouldn't be. It should not be normal, but it is. So just like some people are becoming very numb to police killing us. I mean, it's an unfortunate side effect to it, but I don't think it's fair to say that Black people don't care. We definitely do. So that's just something that I don't realize that I don't think people realize that that's a diverting the type of language. So if we could just work on that too, because we really do care. And that's just like people saying that, Black people don't care about our community. Obviously we do. That's why we're here and having these discussions. We just got to start understanding that some of the solutions that we're saying, even in this discussion, are just Band-Aids. We don't realize how housing affects us, how lack of jobs and opportunities, whether you're a good person or a bad person, it doesn't matter. Those lack of things affect all of these other stuff. So how do we get to the root of that? Maybe is a question that I have.
Rico, you want to go ahead and bring Miss Maddie in?
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely did before I did that. I did just want to touch on this one last point that Shamira made around at-risk youth. Okay, so I think what Nate was saying was accountability and holding individuals accountable to the work that they say they do, because we do have a lot of resources in our community, but holding city officials accountable to the work folks say that they do is not happening because there's not a system in place where you can go to right now in city government where they pay or they give the grant and then they come and do what they call it, when they come and see what you got going on, they
Inspector.
call first. They call first, right? And then Nate then got the phone call, can you bring some kids? You know what I mean? So there's really no levels to hold people accountable. And I think all children that come from underserved communities are considered at risk, because at some point there's a risk. But then we also talking about, and I think Nate, he didn't say it, in risk. What about our in risk youth? And then we have high risk youth. So there's levels to the youth that's being dealt with. So, but there is a pocket of youth that isn't being touched. And I say it all the time. Every time we on this platform, we talk about this stuff. I always talk about these youth right here. The ones that people say they working with, and the violence prevention dollars and all these dollars is in it, and they're not out there putting in the work, because those are the ones that's not going into the programs. Those are the ones you got to hold their hand. Those are the ones you got to go help get a social security card, birth certificate, ID. I know Miss Ayoola know all of them. So those are the ones that he kind of was talking about. I think that it just didn't get explained in detail like that. So without further ado, real quick, let me hold on real quick. Ayoola, let me just bring Miss Maddie in. So this lady right here, she's been doing the work for a very, very, very long time. She's been doing some amazing work in the Western Addition and throughout the city and throughout the state. Miss Maddie Scott, she lost her son, George Scott. And from then, she just been running and been putting in the work. She's been supporting a lot of mothers. Miss Maddie, can you come in and can you just give an introduction, tell us the work that you got going on, what you do, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for inviting me, Rico. And I'm glad that I was able to catch all what you guys have just said. I wish I could have tuned in. Is the webinar recorded so we can go back and review it? Great.
Yes,
Because that's important.
it definitely is. And we'll have our team send you a copy of the video and it'll be up on our
That's
YouTube.
very important so that we can go back to our village and re-educate those young people and their parents that we're talking about. I'm glad to be here. I'm the founder of Healing for Our Families in Our Nation. My son, George, you can see here, he was killed July 17, 1996. And I have at the bottom, every breath is a gift. I'm also sitting here next to my mother, who's 98. She has a little dementia, so she spent the whole holiday with me, and what a joy to have her here with me and help me get through that tragic time when my son was murdered, because I tell you, it wasn't pleasant, particularly knowing the young man that did it and knowing his mom and knowing that he grew up right around the corner from me. I saw the impact of what it did to his family, my family. He never did time for it. And it took me a while, but because of my faith, I was able to forgive that young man. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity of seeing him in the RVSP program at County Jail, San Bruno, the old jail, when Jean O'Hara at the time, Jean O'Hara was one of the mothers that, she's a Caucasian, a Caucasian gentleman broke in her home, her daughter's home, and killed her daughter and her 2-year-old grandson. And Jean O'Hara is one of the reasons why I stepped into this work today, because I was tore up from the floor up when it happened to me. I was angry as hell at the whole world, particularly my community, who knew who did this, and no one came forward to say anything about it. It was devastating. It was very, very devastating when it happened. And as I said, it took some years. It took going into the San Bruno County Jail to hear Jean O'Hara talk about what happened to her and her son and her 2-year-old grandbaby that have me where I'm at today. And then my mom, who's sitting here, who helped me get through the pain of that, unspeakable pain that, is why I do the work, because I know what it did to me and my family. So, and at least, like I said, this pandemic that's going on with COVID, we've been in a pandemic, you all, since the civil rights movement. It has not stopped. And I don't know why they keep calling it a pandemic. No, we've been in a pandemic and still haven't gotten out of it, you know, from the slave ships to the present. And it's going to take, you know, all of us, because this is about all of us, not just some of us, but all of us. And, you know, I lost my nephew in 2007. He was also a product of the program at San Bruno County Jail. He got out, he graduated, and then Timothy got in a car with somebody who was going to a party, and he didn't know the guy was going to a party to kill somebody. He got caught up with him. Apparently, he didn't want anything to do with that, and the guy shot and killed him and threw him out on 17th Street, 17th and Mission. Then my niece, who was cyberbullied in 2012 by a former boyfriend who took some pictures of her when they were, you know, in a moment of making love, I guess. He put those pictures on Facebook. She was devastated by that and checked herself into Mount Zion psychiatric facility to be on the 72-hour hold. Came out of that facility, went and got some alcohol, called her mom, and she went and jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge at age 24. So I lost 3 people, my son, my nephew, and my niece, to violence that's impacted our community and continues to impact us with suicide and homicide. And it all stems from everything that you guys have been talking about. And it's going to take us to do this. You know, we can defund the police all we want. We can do all those things and hold folks accountable, but we have to heal ourselves with each other in our own village. Back in the day, when something happened, you know who squashed it? The mothers. Your mama would bring your behind to that mama's house and say, your child beat up my child after school and continues to do that. What are we going to do about this? And then your mama and my mama made us apologize, and all of us, everybody got a behind whipping. Okay, that was the village concept before Child Protective Services got in the game, you know, and that's the remedy. That is the remedy. We have broken down, we have allowed this system to crush our values and crush us as a people with communication. We had our own systematic village approach. And back then, no one died. No one went to the cemetery.
I think you froze up on us for a little bit there. I think you froze up. Oh, there you go. We can hear you now. You froze up.
Okay. And like I said, nobody went to foster care, nobody went to jail, and nobody did any of those things. So my thing is, now that we have social media, we have all this communication, but yet we're not communication with each other. We need the Black folks and brown people need to be at the table. You know, we got a little gang in my neighborhood that flared up. And then I told the security guard, get their names, get their addresses, because I'm going to go to their mother's house and I'm going to talk to their mothers directly so that we can prevent these young men from picking up a gun, getting a heated argument, and wind up killing one another. You know, so I just think that we as Black people have got to come to the table with each other every day. And our children we have to do like the Jews did. The Jews let all their kids know from age 5 on up about the Holocaust. Everybody knows about the Holocaust. Everybody knows about all of their cultural awareness, who hate them, about the synagogue bombings and shooting. They let all their kids see that. We need to sit our kids down and our people down to let them see those tapes from the Civil Rights Movement. I grew up in the South, in New Orleans. We saw everything. I experienced Jim Crow straight up. So I know who my enemy is, okay? My brother's not my enemy. The system is my enemy, okay? Not you. And our kids don't know that. They have been taught through, you know, a whole new dynamic with the rap music. And I love rap music, don't get me wrong. I'm just certain ones, but we're talking about kill a brother, put a sister on the street or something like that. That stuff gotta stop. That's the number one thing that our kids are lured into, this negativity about each other. They don't know that they invented, George Washington covered what all he invented. They don't know that somebody invented the ironing board, the washing machine, and all these things that we invented. When we let them know that with our Black history, we don't wait for February. We teach them about Black history 365 days a year, because if you look on the calendar, 365 days Black folks contributed to this society and to this community. And when you lay your head on your pillow at night, that was cotton picked. Somebody got filthy rich off of picking cotton, and we should be talking about reparations. Okay, there's another way that things that we should be doing, and with all this brilliancy that we have so many brilliant people here and in our society that we shouldn't be in the shape we're in. And we can't wait on them to do that for us. They ain't gonna do it for us. They're building more prisons. They're not building more colleges and institutions. They don't want us to go to school. They want us to kill each other. So I'm telling them, they say, how could you forgive that young man? I said, that young man is a product of the system. Okay, he's a product of a system that has been set up and designed for us to destroy one another. And then I started giving them Willie Lynch. Read these letters. This is what America's system is about. Willie Lynch. They want you to kill each other. You no longer represent the labor industry anymore. So now you got to go. We don't need you no more. You done built the White House for us. You done picked the cotton. You done it all. You done built everything. No, we don't need you. All we need you to do is to go away. Well, hell no, we're not going away. Hell no, we're not going. We're staying. We're going to mobilize. We're going to educate our kids. We're going to educate one another. And I'm not going to shoot you. You, my brother, I love you. My sister, I'm going to respect you. That's what time it is. That's what we got to do. You think they're going to do it? No, they're not. No, they're not. My mama taught me, my neighbor taught me, and everybody in the neighborhood was my mama, my grandmama. Every father was my daddy. And that's how we got to get it back. They got it all twisted and got us all confused. No, we got to get it back. That's the only way we're going to stop this violence, this mass incarceration, this disrespect for women, you know, and these young ladies not knowing who they are, and these young men not knowing who they are. I know who I am. My daddy taught me before we left the house, because I lived in Jim Crow, New Orleans. So by the time I got to kindergarten, he knew me and my sisters was going to be called jigaboos, little pickaninnies and all those things. So my daddy taught me and my sisters and my brother that we were queens who were made by God. He showed us the scripture in the Bible, who we were. Then he showed us who we were and what we did and what we built in this nation. So when I got 5 years old and went to kindergarten, you can call me any name you want. That would bounce off. Why? Because I already knew who I was. And that's what we got to do to our children if we want to stop this violence and this killing each other with the N word. We never use the N word. You guys know that. That was a fight. Somebody called somebody that. That was a fight. You was about to get a whipping and you call somebody the N word. And now they use it like it ain't nothing. You know, so I'm just pumped right now because I just learned that there was another shooting in the church. This guy walked in the church and killed some people. I just learned. We just had our prayer meeting with our Mothers in Charge group nationwide on Friday. And do you know Philadelphia? This is so sad. My heart breaks that 500 people lost their lives in Philadelphia and 200 of them was under 18. Now that's what, yeah, you're right. We should be raising hell. I have a problem with that. Talk about a pandemic with COVID. What about a pandemic with us killing each other? That is a pandemic, and us not having employment and us being the most homeless, you know, and then using our people as guinea pigs so they can get more funding, more grants. And as you say, Rico, the grants is not coming to us. Well, then you're not going to get our numbers. You're not going to get our people. We're not going to give you our stats. No, because you're making money. It's a slave system that's still in place, and they're pimping us. They're going to keep pimping us until we get it together as Black people. Okay? That's where I'm at.
That's what I'm talking about. See, this is what I need to hear, because this really pumps me up, and to have an elder in the room, you know, give that type of, that's a benediction right there. And, you know, that's what we're trying to do here at both sides of the conversation, is have these type of conversations. And we have to bridge the gap with our elders and our young people. And what you said is so powerful. We have to do this.
We can do it.
We can't wait on anybody. We have to do it. And that's the initiative me and Rico took. We can't sit back and wait for a grant. We can't wait back for people to get involved. We just got to do something to make it happen. And we understand here that the start of this healing process is through communication. We have to get it off our chest. We have to have the difficult conversations. We know that these conversations is not happening in our spiritual faith-based places a lot of the times. So we got to have somewhere we can vent and talk and throw ideas around and do the work. But you've given us a great perspective from the old school. And how do we teach those intangibles to our young people? And then also, Miss Maddie, I want to ask you, because this is a question, and it's kind of like my both sides of conversation movement. And Ayoola touched on it earlier. Our young people want to get involved with community, with the elders. But a lot of times the young people feel that they're not validated. The stuff that they bring up, the elders are not listening. They don't want to think about them, and it's just about, the elders. How, in your perspective, do you think we bridge this gap with our young people, and how do we pass the torch? Me and Rico are always talking about how do we take the elders of the community to pass the torch to the young leaders and get behind them and support them. A lot of times the elders will give up the torch and say, hey, well, y'all can go take it, and then they disappear. They don't want to give them information. They don't want to teach them. And I think that's also a problem in our community. It goes back to the funding, the grants, because my question to Rico and to the community always is, have we became our own oppressors as Black people, as Black community leaders? We have organizations, we have resources for our community, but a lot of times, like Nate was saying, these gatekeepers, the people who have the decision, are also the people that's oppressing us, keeping us down. So what's your thoughts about that?
My thoughts is everything is possible. All things are possible. What they said we couldn't do, we did. Okay. When Mary McLeod Bethune did, she built a college with $1.50. Okay. We look at at what our folks did, our elders, giving them their due respect, and at the same time giving our young people their respect. What they're doing is it's the same thing, but it's just a different format. Okay. It's with the now generation. Back then we had Sugar Hill Gang. Okay. Today you got Ice Cube and you got all the other folks, but bringing that together, like making sure that I'm here for you so that you can reach your goal and reach your future. Bringing those young people and those old people together, our seniors. I'm an elder myself. I just turned 68 proudly this year, and I ain't afraid of my age. I love my age because of where it's brought me from. And so, as I said, we had back in the day, we didn't let nobody know what we was doing. That was number one. Black folks talk too much and tell all their business to everybody. There's got to be a time when you got to separate them. They're not going to let you over there in their stuff. The Chinatown ain't going to let you know what all their stuff. The Jews ain't going to let you know all their stuff. Not excluding them, but you got to have that cohesiveness first with each other, okay, so that you can strengthen your cords. You got to have those roots brought together first. So what you do is every Friday or we can have a Friday, like Third Baptist. We have Friday Night Live. We started with Reverend Brown back in I'm going to say the late 80s, or no, actually,
I think you froze
We
up.
lost your audio again, Miss Maddie. And John, we have a couple of hands in the
Can you hear me?
Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. You kind of froze up for a second. Go ahead.
Okay. Now I'm watching my screen. So, because our young children, they need to know who they are. They need to know where they come from. So now let's allow the elders and you to come together once a month if we can. Once a month, pick a day, a weekend. Let it be a Saturday, or let it be a Friday. Friday, I like Friday because Friday night is when most of our young folks are out in the street, and that's when most of them are getting murdered. So why not Friday night? That gives the seniors a place to go, and that gives the young people a place to go. Bringing them together. Our young people like soul food. We seen the movie Soul Food. Cook some greens, fry some fish, some catfish or some fish. We have fish fries in New Orleans. That's what we did. We have fish fries every Friday night. The old folks will play pitty patting cards. The young folks will play other games. At the same time, they're teaching us while we're playing games. So bring the games to the table. Hey, let me show you how to play this game. Let me show you how to play this game. Educate them. When you feed them and you give them some pound cake or some sweet potato pie, not just on Thanksgiving, hey, they get comfortable. They want more. They didn't ate some they didn't smoke their little Grimmies. They didn't smoke their blunts. Then they ate some jelly. I know because I got grandkids. Okay, so they hungry. I'm keeping it real. They hungry. Okay, they ain't like we didn't smoke it. We smoked it too. Okay, and letting them know, hey, I did some of the same things you did, but let me tell you how we did it. And then they learn it from you, you learn it from them. So they'll know that it's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done. It's all been done. We used to party just like you. Show them those footage and those films when my mom and them used to do the Lindy Hop and all that stuff. Show them Chuck Berry, how famous he was, and how Elvis Presley stole all his shit. Excuse my French. Okay, then we'll call Elvis Presley the king. No, he wasn't. Chuck Berry was. Okay, they need to know their history. They need to know what we contributed to this country so they could be proud of who they are. They could be glad that Obama just didn't become president. This is what happened along the way. Show them lynches on the tree, you know, a strange fruit that Billie Holiday talked about in that song. That's what it's about. Okay, show them the water hose, how we got water hose as kids, you know, for you to be able to vote. They need to know and see what our elders went through so that you could have a better life, and how education was key. But we didn't kill each other. We didn't curse each other. We were each other's neighbor. We took that to heart, you know, so they can learn how to become neighbors with each other, not enemies, you know. So those are the things I think. It's very simple. You don't need a you know, pot of grease, some fish, some cornbread. They'll bring everybody to the table. You ain't gotta wait for Thanksgiving. Do it every week. Show some footage, and then show some footage of the up and coming entrepreneurs like Ice Cube, Ice T, and all of them. Show where they come from, and then have them come speak. Have them come speak and tell their story. I wasn't always perfect. I didn't always come from. I lived in South Central LA. It was hell, you know. So we have the tools, we have the people, we have the food. We have it, y'all. It's just a matter of setting it up and making it happen. And I'll be willing. I have young girls in my house. I have young men come to my house, and I teach them and I show them where we came from and what we did as a people. And they be like, wow, I didn't know we did that. Yes, we did. We built it all. We built the White House. You're damn right. Have you heard of Benjamin Banneker? He made the first clock. He did the telescope. He did all that. And he designed the White House. They didn't even know that. Okay, so it's just a matter. And then we got all of our elders who have such powerful stories of where they came from. You know, all the stories that they had to come through. A lot of them migrated from the South to the shipyards here in San Francisco. They don't know that.
Right.
Our kids don't know that. You live on a Bayview is powerful. Fillmore is the Harlem of the West. Did you know that? Did you know that Booker T Hotel was the only hotel that Black people could stay at? Black entertainers like James Brown and Aretha Franklin, because they couldn't stay at the Fairmont because it was racist. Racism right here in San Francisco. San Francisco got some history too. And then you have the 3 oldest Black churches here in San Francisco. You got Bethel AME, you got First Baptist, and you got Third Baptist. They were all on Power Street, y'all. Get that. They were where the Fairmont Hotel is. Did y'all know that? That's where the churches were. You know, so we have a lot to give our kids. It's a matter of setting it up and making it happen. And I'm down with it. I'm ready to give it to them. I give it to them. I don't care. I'll fix some food. Come on sit at my table. Let me tell you something. Okay. And that's what we are. That's what we need to be. Because I'm tired of telling it to you behind when you're locked up in jail at the program at RSVP. I need to tell it to you before you go behind the jail. I don't want you to go to jail. Then I'm gonna tell you how you can go to college. We busted our behind so city college could be free. So you ain't got no excuse. We got tutorial programs to teach you how to read. We got all of that. So we're blessed here with nothing but resources for our African-American kids here. You know, my hat's off to everybody on this call. Cheryl Davis, what's his name at my brother at Elihu Hutch, Sean Richards, and everybody. I mean, we've all are doing the work. It's just a matter of bridging the gap, and we can do it.
Man, definitely. I love the energy. I just want everybody to know, I know we got 15 minutes to go. We might go over a few minutes later, but we got Miss Gail here. But thank you, Maddie, for saying that, because we do have some elected officials and leaders that want to see this change with education. So thank you for shouting out Cheryl Davis, our mayor. A lot of the community leaders are doing things, and just appreciate you doing that. But Miss Gail, if you want to go ahead and unmute your mic and jump in, we got a few minutes left. I know a couple people want to say something before we close out, and we're going to respect that. So go ahead, Miss Gail.
First of all, I want to thank my sister from the West Coast, my sunshine that shines over here in Jersey, for making me jump on this Zoom on this Sunday. I had to stop everything I was doing because we were on a totally different timeline. But I just want to thank you, brothers, for giving us women a platform to speak. I want to thank you all for doing this work. I want to thank Miss Maddie Scott, who got my heart beating about out the chest. I'm 64. I'm about that work. And I just thank you all. I will be following you all. I will be on these calls with you because this is so important. I work with the youth in New Jersey. This is why my sister brought me here. I've been working in the prisons in our state for over 20 years. The name of our organization is Women Who Never Give Up. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Mothers in Charge because I rocks with them in Philly. And yes, we have our babies to save. I'm on board. Let's set up the table and we have to do a Zoom. I'll be here repping Jersey with you all, with my young folks. 3 generations, I believe it needs to be at this table. And so I'm on board. I love the work. Thank you so much for thinking about me, sis. You know, you're my sunshine. Happy to this new 2021. I'm all excited, excuse me, but we work on Sundays. This is so cool sometimes because I jumped on this. I'm so glad that, you invited me.
And we thank you. And that's what this is about. The work don't stop. It's no day of the week. It's no hour of the day. It's 24 hours. But again, the way we start healing and change is we got to engage and have dialogue and conversation. And this is what this is about. And we will be engaging our young people. We are putting a call out to all the mothers in the community. If you have young people who have a voice and want to be heard, we want to bring them on this platform because the only way we can start these conversations, we got to have it with our young people. We have to hear their dynamics, some of the challenges that they're dealing with. And then how can we give them the wisdom that we have as elders in the community to help them flourish in the way they need to. And it starts with love and compassion. And I'm just blessed to be here with all you mothers and families on here to have this conversation, to keep it going, because I see a lot of the comments in the community and the community agrees with this. A lot of times there's, like Rico said earlier, these mental health providers are not providing mental health in our community because we know in our community, mental health is a stigma sometimes and we don't want to go deal with it. And we know in the Black and brown community, it's about show me. So when we have things like this, where we could come on here and talk and people could see it's okay to be vulnerable in a safe space to talk about it, I think this is how the change begin. And you just have to continue to understand healing can happen in our community through communication. It takes time. And that's why both sides of the conversation is bringing this to the table. So we got a few minutes left before we close out. Rico, Danielle, Kashla, y'all want to say anything? We getting close to the end here, but I want you guys to get in and then we got to let Ayoola come in at the end here. Go ahead, Rico.
I would rather defer to Danielle if she had anything.
Yeah, I'd like to say I like what Miss Maddie said about just thinking about new and innovative ways to get the young people, involved and just have them listen, because we have the resources in our community. We do have a lot of programs. I've been involved in a couple. I am a teacher, educator in San Francisco Bayview, and I know there's children that don't show up to those after school programs where they can get help. So thinking of just different ways we can get them involved. And yes, food brings me to the table all the time. I'm a foodie. Yes, come with a plate and I'm there. So we need to think about that. And one thing that I've thought about through 2020, one thing it's taught me and taught us is to be creative. We have to get outside of traditional ways of educating our kids and getting them the knowledge. So I love that idea. So thank you for that.
So I want to play both sides of the conversation on that comment because that's what we do here. There's no personal attack, but also because me and Muffy talked about this, and I know Vanessa's on here listening. We need dedicated leaders in our community. We need dedicated mothers and fathers to step up and do their responsibility. And what typically happens in our community is people only show up for the food. A lot of times community things going on and we got to bring food for people to show up. And sometimes those are not the people we need. We need people, whether it's food, not food, to be involved, to show up. We have to get out of this mentality in our Black and brown community that the only way we can show up if we getting something. We have to have compassion and love for what's really going on. And having that compassion and love is I'm involved. It doesn't matter what's going on. I'm there. We have to make this a priority to get involved. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Not saying that food is not a good thing. It is a way to bring our people together, but I want to see more committed leaders in the community, and I want to see more community committed parents and fathers committed to change and being involved without incentives.
Well, I definitely got something to say on that because I agree with you. However, we got to meet people where they're at. And if that means starting off with food to get them there, to get them the information, then that's what we got to do. One of the meetings that we had with our city hall was the fact that they don't know how, like you guys said, to reach these kids. Kids ain't on Facebook. Kids aren't reading these pamphlets that are, being sent out to people's homes. These kids are on Snapchat. These kids are on TikTok. These kids are on Instagram. They're not using the account that their parents know. They're using spam accounts. So all of these little things are things that we as adults need to know so we can reach these kids. So if that means I got to get on TikTok, do a little dance or whatever it is so that it connects and we're giving them the information and telling them to come out to food, that's what I'm going to do. Because that's what we need to do to reach these kids. And then eventually we'll start giving the knowledge that they'll become hungry for. But we got to start somewhere. So if that means starting off with a plate, let's start off with a plate. Like, I don't care how we have to start. As long as we can reach them is what should matter. And I totally understand you, because sometimes that can be frustrating. When we would have mentor groups and we would want these, parents to show up and they didn't, it would be so frustrating. But also having the moment to have empathy to take a step back. Parents want to be there. But if the rent's due and they got a job to do, they can't take off. Some people don't even know that in California, you can take 40 days off paid. That was something that was passed with Bill Clinton. Like, you can actually do that. Talking about, lovely information about, just knowing where we come from. I had no idea that George Washington Carver was the reason that Henry J. Ford calls places a plant now, because he was very instrumental in that. All of these little things, they seem minor, but they're really important to get out there, and we got to start somewhere. So however that looks, teaching people that they can take time off and they can get paid for it, let's make sure that they know that they can do that here. Making sure that people can get their bills paid is just as important, and then making sure that they show up too. So I totally understand where you're coming from, John, but sometimes you just got to, compromise a little bit, just a little.
It's not a hard no. I just had to throw that out there. I was just playing both sides of the conversation. I think it's important, however we could come to the table to meet and convene. I think that's amazing, and that's what we have to do. But I just also want to make sure that we are committed to our young people, and that starts in our homes. And a lot of times we have to be honest as community too. In these neighborhoods that we work in, a lot of our parents are not committed to our kids' education, their involvement, and we have to. And it starts with the parents, and I always say this, coming from working in juvenile to coming back to the community, I see more dysfunction with adults than I do kids. Sometimes our kids have better ideas and can figure out stuff better than our own adults. And I'm just being honest. And I'm not saying that everything our young people are doing is right. I'm just saying I see more dysfunction amongst adults in this community work than I do with the children. I think that's something that we also have to think about and play with accountability. We're getting close here to the end.
I just want to add 2 cents. First, thank you and much respect to all the elders and everybody who joined the platform today for the conversation. It was a hard one, but it was very necessary. As a community healer, I'm very, very elated to hear, that some folks are still involved in the conversation, because we need our elders in the conversation. We need those who have been there to emit the wisdom and to be willing to pass down the torch. We've talked across the platform today about how often and how necessary it is for the torch to be passed down, for that sharing of knowledge and that information gap to be filled, and coming not from a place of ignorance, but from a place of experience and understanding. So I really just want to uplift that and appreciate you all for being here, for being willing to join the conversation, to emit your wisdom and your perspective with us, to make sure that we get it so that we can embark it upon, those that are to come. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the challenge that I want to put forth to community, because as a very engaged person in community, it takes a lot. It takes a village. We have a project called the Pop-Up Resource Village that we're working on, and a lot of other things. There's also different boards that have been set up, Reimagining Public Safety Board, for, to reimagine how we not necessarily defund the police, but reallocate those fundings to programs that really make a difference in our community, right? And so we do need people to just step up, just do what you can. Everybody is not going to be a mathematician. Everybody's not going to be a tutor. Everybody can't be a coach, but you can be a consistent, honorable, integrity presence in these children, and in some cases parents' lives. Parents need mentors too. Parents need a village too. Parents need an outlet too. Mamas need other mamas too. Daddies need other babas too. It's like, you know, we talk about mentoring for the youth. We also need that for some of these adults, because there has been a war on drug and a generation gap that has affected our community deeply. And we need to start continuing to start having these conversations for that process of healing. And so I would just like for everybody to find something that they can do, some way, in some shape, form, or fashion, that they can contribute to the community on a consistent basis, whether it be by supporting both sides of the conversation, whether it be by volunteering at a local rec center, whether it be by going to do a food donation every week. Whatever it is, whatever you can do that's within your capacity to do consistently. I want everybody for 2021 to challenge themselves to do something. That's the way that we're going to build these bridges and really just do better. There's so much other things and so many other comments I could make and I could say, but I just really want to leave that challenge upon us as we exit out of this conversation, and really give thanks for you all being here with us today.
And definitely, and before we pass it to everybody to give out their final words, Rico, I just want to say, I hear this word that Kasha just said, reimagine. It's all in all the rooms. Everybody's reimagining everything. And I want to change that. Because we trying to reimagine something that never was there. We talk about 50, 100 years of the problems. We've had our educators on here on our Hidden Gem show talking about the magnitude of problems that's still happening. So when I hear reimagine, it makes me feel some kind of way, because we reimagining something that never was there. But what I would like to do is how do we imagine having these difficult conversations in our community to help heal? Let's have these tough conversations with our community leaders, these poverty pimps in our community as community. Let's stop sitting there turning a blind eye when we see people doing things that's hurting our community and stepping us back. That's what I want to imagine. I want to imagine people on the front lines holding these people accountable, and that comes with people having courage and stepping up. So I don't want to reimagine. I just want people to step up and hold people accountable and have a different conversation. So with that, go ahead, Rico.
That sounds amazing, John.
And that is both sides of the conversation.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm loving that.
So I just would offer that, the race is not to the swift nor to the strong, but it's only to those who can endure. As long as we continue to endure the race that we are in, the possibilities become very endless in the work that we all do. I think that there's a collective effort, there's an individual effort. As long as we put forth effort, things can happen. Things can change, things will change, because I'm seeing it happen every single day. The more and more me and John engage in both sides of the conversation, Kashla, what she got going on, Maddie, Miss Gail, Shamira, Danielle, everyone has their part to play. And I think that we're all contributing to the main objective, and that is change and healing and supporting our community with getting to the next level. So I would personally end it with that. And I also wanted to say, John, we have to do this one more time. We got to continue the conversation. I think that there was so much more that needed to be said. And I don't know how we're going to figure it out with our busy schedule, but Kashla, maybe you can help us with it.
So I think, and I want everybody to know, these conversations are not going away. These a couple of weeks are not going away. This is just the start. We're trying to get the ball rolling, but we know there's a lot of conversation. And in this conversation, you guys see, this is really about our families who dealt with loss, and it turns into a lot of things, because all these other things that we talk about also contribute to some of the things that's impacted by our community. So the conversations won't stop. We're going to keep bringing them, but I want to give Ayoola a minute to say her last words before we close out. Is there anything you wanted to say? Any resources you wanted to give to the community, websites they should check out, and just give us your blessing before we close out?
Just really quickly, I want to thank my sister Gail for chiming in from the East Coast. I also want to say, one of the to parents who have lost their children, whether it is to murder or any other kind of way, the group that helped me the most It's called Compassionate Friends, and it's a support group for parents whose children have died, and in all kind of ways, at all kind of ages. And one of the reasons why it helped me so much is because, one, if you haven't lost a child, then you just can't relate. And two, the loss is the loss. You know, whether it is they died of a disease, or they were murdered, or they committed suicide, or whatever. That is a group that helped me tremendously, and that that organization, Compassionate Friends, is nationwide. You just have to Google it and find out where it is in your area. I want to thank you guys again for inviting me. Thank everybody who had comments. And like Shamia, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, said, we got to meet people where they are. And if that means food, then let's fry some chicken, fry some fish, whatever. Let's do that. And just to to bring up something that they used to say to us all the time, Dr. Marshall used to say all the time, John, is that why they come isn't why they stay.
Real talk. Thank you very much for that powerful word. Miss Maddie, you want to give us a few words before we go out of here?
I'm just grateful, very grateful, humbly grateful to all of you and all my sisters, all of you. It's just a pleasure, Ayoola, work with you. And I'm just so grateful to read from Rico and all of you asking me to come on. It takes a village, an entire village to heal us. Mm-hmm. And this is about all of us or none of us. And we have to stop the killing and start the healing, because they're killing us. They're killing us, and we can stop it. They're killing us from housing, education. They're still killing us with the same mechanism that was killing us 30, 40 years ago. So it hasn't changed, and they want to do that. We can stop it. We can stop it. I've said we're in it to win it, and together we will. So I love you all, and I'm so grateful. And I'm here to do my part and become a surrogate mother or a surrogate, provider, because that's what I consider myself. Because a lot of, like one of you said, our mothers are hurting. These young mothers don't know about motherhood. They didn't get the stuff we got. So they need us to show them how to become mothers. And our young men need you all to show them how to become fathers and young men. So thank you. I'm looking forward to the next one.
And thank you too, Miss Maddie. And that's one thing we got out of our parents conversation last week. We want to come up with our curriculum to tell our story on parenting from the trials and tribulations we had. And that's what we working on, because we want to give these young people some tools. So I appreciate you saying that. Nate, you want to say anything before we go, Nate?
No, I think everybody said it all, but just seeing Miss Maddie on here, I remember those Freedom West days, boy. Yeah, well, she was right. Anytime we had a dispute, we took it to the moms and we settled it. I'm just glad to see her. I'm so glad to see Miss Maddie on here.
So good to see you, Nate. Yes. And so good to see you. Let me tell you this one thing: the elders and the youth. We got elders that right now they miss their grandkids. They don't have anybody. They want to be grandparents. These kids need grandparents. They want to be grandparents. They can teach their teachers, their nurses. They want to teach our kids how to read. Let's utilize our elders. We have a lot of educated elders that can give a lot of stuff to our young people. I utilize them all the time. They said, I need something to do. I'm bored. I'm at home. Let's utilize them, you guys. They got skills. They know what time they survived the worst. So what better person to utilize? And then we utilize our brothers coming out of San Quentin and from No More Tears to get at our young men. That's helping them to keep them from killing each other. So we have it. We just got to put it together. I'll make some gumbo. I'll fry some chicken. I'll fry some fish. I'll do whatever it takes to save a life. Anything.
All right. That's right. Miss Gail, you want to say something? We know you're on the East Coast. We appreciate that, because a lot of times, I'm glad you came on today. We get a lot of flack because we from San Francisco, and they always throwing the shade at us, saying that we only talk about San Francisco stuff. So you tapping in from New Jersey is just letting people know both sides of the conversation is everywhere. We all around. It ain't just in San Francisco. So we thank you for coming on to represent.
Yeah, Mothers and George is in New Jersey. Yes.
Let me tell you something. I've been following the work that you all been doing on the West Coast for 20 years. I will hold you down over here on the East Coast. A lot of the work that I have done have come because I followed the lead of you all in the West Coast. I believe the sunrise from the West and sets on the East. It's called. I've been watching for 20 years. When I ran into Ayoola, one of the first things we said when I go into the prison here in New Jersey, one of the first things I said to you guys is like, what happened to you? I know that your mom, your parents, this is not the route that you were raised to have. And when she said that to people, we just looked at each other like, ooh, ooh, ooh. We were cut from the same cloth, and it's been on ever since. So I'm definitely going to be on the other side of the conversation from New Jersey.
Thank you.
So I got somebody asking about contact information. Can you guys talk about both sides of the conversation? I know you put it up at the beginning, upcoming events, but how often?
Give me 1 second. When we close out, we're gonna get all the information. Kashla, can we hit the chat in the group? I'll let everybody know. You can get us on Facebook. All of our social media handles is both sides of the conversation. We on Instagram, YouTube, we on Twitter, we on Facebook, we everywhere. Just look up both sides of the conversation. We having a website release party coming shortly. But before, I just want to get the rest of the people off. Shamira, can you go ahead and say your last words, and then we'll have Danielle, and then me and Rico will close it out and finish. And I see Lorraine up there. I don't know if she want to say something, but Lorraine, if you want to say something, just let me know. Turn your camera on or something.
I just want to say, like I always do, I'm very thankful for coming into contact with you guys here at both sides of the conversation. I'm glad that we always have discussions that cover so many topics that some people are afraid to talk about. I love this discussion because, again, we hear all the time, Black people are not a monolith, and it's so true. How we all deal with loss, how we all deal with, great things, how we deal with, not so comfortable things, it's all very different. How we heal is very different. But all I know is every time we have this discussion, one thing that always comes up is we need each other. And we need each other more than we need anything else. All the resources will come eventually, I promise, as long as we keep working together and we keep building with each other, we keep supporting local Black businesses, we keep giving Black dollars where they're supposed to be given. And again, holding people accountable, no matter what county, what state, what city, whatever, it doesn't matter. So just having these discussions and continuing these discussions. I brought my son in here because I wanted him, especially as Miss Maddie started to talk, I wanted to make sure he could sit in here and listen, because these discussions need to continue after Zoom goes off. What are we saying to our families afterwards? How are we bringing this discussion up within our friend circles? All of these things, listening to Miss Maddie and Ayoola talking about their healing, that's something that we don't talk about. The way you guys talked about forgiveness, we see in Tyler Perry films, but we don't talk about that amongst each other. And when people do talk about stuff like healing and forgiveness, we're demonized for how you guys chose to heal. And I didn't lose my son. I have lost 2 kids and I have lost, family, but not in the same ways. But it doesn't matter how everybody chooses to heal. As long as you're healing and it's positive, go with it. And I love that you guys talked about that. That's why this space is very important. And I just hope that every space that you guys talk to or you're in or working within, it just continues to grow. And I hope that this is a great beginning of 2021.
Man, thank you. Very powerful. That's what we hope. Like Costa said, there's opportunities to volunteer, help us out. We just want to make this thing better. We want to make it more organized. We want to be able to really touch the topics, get the panelists and the guests, because we also have the community perspective, but we also want the professional perspective. And I think that's very important. So Danielle, you want to say something? The last closeout, anything you want to give back to the mothers or anything you want to leave the community with?
Just thank you guys all. Just hang in there. Here in the San Francisco in specific, our populations have decreased to 3%. And so a lot of us are moving out of our neighborhoods and our communities and gentrification and everything else. But it doesn't mean we can't do something to still give back and make a difference. We got to come back in some way, whether it's donating, volunteering our time. We have to do something to stay connected to our communities. So let's not forget that. And that's it for me. Stay safe, everybody.
You. And everybody out there, Danielle is coming on board with us, co-hosting. Every week is going to get better. She's going to get more involved with us. We got some other volunteers helping out. So people are trying to give back and help out. Rico, you want to close out with the events coming up, or you want me to, or how you want to do it? Or you want me to just give my last words? Go, whatever you want to do.
I'll defer to you.
Well, everybody, as we wrap up, welcome to this conversation of both sides of the conversation. Today was about healing. We heard from our families of loss. We had a lot of other conversations that came out of this conversation today. Very powerful and impactful information, a phenomenal conversation. We're going to continue to push this conversation of healing, love, and it takes a village approach. We're going to keep doing that. As you heard from Ayoola, and we talked about the mothers and the things that they need and the support. This pain, this healing process is a continued process. So don't just be the person that show up for the tragedy. Don't be the person that just show up to the funeral. Don't be the person just to show up for a couple of days. They need love. They need support all year, throughout the years. This is never an easy process, a tough conversation. Thank you and Miss Maddie for coming on here to speak. I know some of the other parents in the community wanted to come in and they wasn't ready. The conversation is too powerful and it's too emotional for them. And we respect that and we respect their space and they energy. And we love them and we're going to continue to keep them in our prayers and lift them up. And if you out there, you know somebody who maybe didn't speak today that lost a child or lost someone to a tragic violent situation or any situation, make a phone call, check on them. In 2021, like Costa said, let's do better as community to show love and support to our family, to our loved ones. Let's forgive. If Miss Maddie can forgive, we can forgive. Some of the family disputes, let's forgive. Let's reach out and talk to that sister, that brother that we have issues with and just say, hey, I love you. I'm just checking on you. Because sometimes that can make a difference in a person's life. And we just got to continue to do that and support the people of the community. This Tuesday, everyone, we have 3 live webinars a week. This Tuesday at 7 p.m. We will have our hidden gem segment. We will have another group of amazing hidden gems that we will be highlighting in our community, some phenomenal people that's doing some amazing things. And also we're going to highlight our Black and brown businesses. We're going to continue to let the people know here at both sides of the conversation, we are trying to promote our Black and brown businesses. We are giving you a platform where you could come and promote your business for free. We want the community to know where you at, your office of business, what are you doing so that our people could patronize your building business and support you. That's what we about here. Unity, bringing people together. We can't charge everybody for everything. We understand that, but we want you to come here, promote your business so that our community can spend their dollars in your business because that we understand that through that process, we can build better businesses and we can impact our community with employment and a number of things that can help us in our community. So this Tuesday at 7 p.m., please tune in and watch us for our hidden gems. And you can learn some things about some people in the community that's doing some great things that's impacting our community. And then Thursday, every Thursday at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., we have our Educational Thursday series. We had a couple Thursdays. We was off for the holidays, starting off in 2021. We are going to be back on every Thursday at 6 p.m. We're going to be coming on with an educational presentation for the community. So if you're a person out in the community that has a specific professional background, that you have a PowerPoint presentation that you feel our community can be impacted with the information, definitely reach out to us at both sides of the conversation at gmail.com. We want to get you on. We are booked until February. So please reach out to us. We don't want to wait to the last minute. But this Thursday, we will have a tax attorney coming on, giving our people game in our community and understand these tax loopholes, understand some of the things for taxes so we can stay ahead of the game, because we know information is what's needed to break some of this gap and wealth disparities and things that's happening in our community. People have information that we don't have, so we're trying to bring that together to help unify our community. And then this Sunday conversation will be another phenomenal conversation. It will be emotional. It will be frustrating. It will be angry. We are talking about human trafficking in our community. This is a growing problem across the United States. It is impacting the Black and brown community significantly. Our young girls are being snatched off the street. They are being sold. A lot of things are happening. We have some panelists that's going to be joining us. If you are someone that's in that field of human trafficking, whether you're law enforcement, counselor, therapist, and you understand what's going on, we need you guys to come on here to educate our community so that we can know what to look for, what to see, how to get involved, because this is an issue that's not going away. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I've posted some of these videos and articles in our group. Please look at that information. This is going to be a very important conversation for our women and our young girls in the community. And we got some people that's going to be talking about it. I think that's going to be a great conversation this Sunday coming up. So if you want to be involved in that conversation, or you know someone in your network, or you have a friend or someone that understands what's going on with this human traffic, we would like to have them on as a panelist so we can educate the community about this human trafficking and find out how we can do something to stop this stuff that's happening in our community, because it's really impacting our young people. And that's going to be important. So with that being said, we're going to end today. Thank you all the mothers for coming on. We love you guys. We pray you We know this violence is not going to stop. It's not easy. It's only a couple days into the New Year's, and the violence has already kicked off in a major way. You heard Miss Maddie talking about some of the things that's going on the news right now, and our communities are still being affected. We got to reach our young people. We got to talk to them. We got to love them. We got to listen. But we also have to tell our troops as elders of the community and be supportive of these young people. And it's very important. So thank you guys for tuning in to this Sunday's conversation. We'll replay it. If you missed some parts of it, you can go to our YouTube and check it out, and we'll get it uploaded as soon as possible. But definitely join our Facebook group. We'll replay it, start a watch party in our Facebook group. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys. We see you on Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in. Have a blessed evening.